So you want to be a lean, clean greens machine, and you can just read through some of these amazing study results. Harvard University, they say 2 daily servings decrease the risk of heart attack and stroke by 20%. But some of our plant-based doctors, our lifestyle medicine doctors are saying, oh, you need more than that. 4 or 5 servings, which is just like, oh, that seems overwhelming, but not really. Because if you eat a really big salad, that takes care of a lot of servings. I get my salad bowls at restaurant supply houses because nowhere else do they have bowls big enough for the tossing and then the amount of salad that I want to eat in the summertime. In the winter, I'm more likely to do beans and greens, where I'll just get in a big pot and saute onion, garlic, and then whatever other vegetables I want, bunch of greens, throw in some beans and spices. It's wonderful. Or sometimes I will do a lean, clean greens steamer. And I'll start with starchy vegetable, maybe a yellowfin potato or sweet potatoes. And then I'll have the greens that I'll add a little bit later, broccoli, collards, kale, whatever I've got. If it's going to be spinach, I add that at the very end and just cook it a minute or two. And then some beans, and it's all good. And spices, of course. So just read through this. It's stunning. When you think about some of these ideas, like why we need exercise, why greens are so important. They're tiny little things. On the one hand, we look at what goes on in the medical system and these giant hospital complexes and their amazing, expensive machinery. And when that is necessary, thank goodness we have it. But look what we also have. Look what we have cheap and available to us. And I do want to mention this last thing. Some people do have trouble digesting certain foods, particularly when you get older. But for other people, it's just a lifelong thing. Their gut is just not as powerful as somebody else's. And a lot of times people will give up on being plant-based because of this. So you want to be real gentle with those people and not say, what's wrong with you? Because what's wrong with them is probably their tummy hurt. And so if you have that kind of thing going on, you want to work with yourself and see what's going to make it possible for you to eat some of these foods. So you start with small amounts. You pay attention to how you do with certain foods. So for example, the cabbage family, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, they have an antioxidant that you can't get anywhere else, sulforaphane, anti-cancer, miraculous substance. But if it hurts every time you eat them, it's not going to be that great for you. So you want to figure out ways to get these in you that you can handle now while you're building up your digestive capacity. So all these foods we're talking about are prebiotics because they have the fiber that the good gut bacteria like to eat. And so just every meal is helping. So if you're having a problem before you get to the strong digestive point, then figure out ways that you can eat these that work for you. So I am a big fan of green juices. I know some people will say, well, that's not whole food. I know that, but it's the best part of what's in the greens. And yes, we need fiber, and most people don't get enough of it. But we get a lot of fiber the way we eat. And with green juices, I always feel like I am getting an infusion of youthfulness and vitality. And if you can't eat raw kale or steamed kale or sauteed kale, you can probably manage kale in a juice with cucumber, maybe a little bit of apple, some lemon. Lemon and green juice makes all the difference. So that's one way. Another way is to cook the greens. And as much as raw food has all that prana and that life force energy, it's more difficult to digest than when you've cooked the food and you've broken down some of that fiber, and maybe a smaller amount at first. And if you do want to do like a raw kale salad, just massage the heck out of that kale. You put it in the bowl, you put in your acid, your vinegar or your lemon. If you do use a little olive oil, that's up to you. And if you do use a tiny little bit of salt, I am basically salt-free at this point of my life, but the chemical action of a little bit of salt when you're massaging those kale leaves, it cooks them without cooking them. It breaks down some of that tough fibrous material so that if you couldn't eat them before, you can eat them now. So it's really worth working with a dietitian, a nutritionist, somebody who can help you figure out ways to get the greens in your diet. Now, we talk about protein usually to say, it's not a big deal. Just don't worry about it, because protein is in everything that grows up out of the ground. And if you're eating a varied natural food diet, you're going to get plenty of it. However, older people do require a little bit more. Not a tremendous amount more. They can absolutely certainly be plant-based, just a little bit more, simply because it's harder for older people to metabolize all nutrients, and because there is this breakdown of the muscle that happens as we age. So it's not difficult. It just means you make sure that in every meal you have some kind of concentrated protein. So beans, lentils, soy foods, even soy milk. You know, you can read those labels. I know we don't do a lot of label reading because we're not buying a lot of food in packages. But if you use non-dairy milk, you can just look at the various labels. What's the difference in the calcium? What's the difference in the protein? They vary widely. And soy milk is nice and substantial and does have protein. Quinoa, wonderful, has all the amino acids, hummus, peanut butter, and even greens, which are not considered a high protein food because they're low in calories, but per calorie, leafy greens have more protein than beef. And I do recommend this book, Plant Powered Protein, by two wonderful dietitians, Brenda Davis and Vasanto Molina, and the recipes are to live for. So, food and inflammation. We always hear about inflammation these days, but it's kind of hard to know what it is. How do we get it? And on top of that, there's all kinds of misinformation and people that have different dietary philosophies. It's so weird. Nutrition is supposed to be a science, and yet we still have different philosophies within that science. Is that bizarre? We don't have different philosophies in, I don't know, physics or electronics, but we've got it with nutrition. But here's the real list of pro-inflammatory foods. And again, they're the same things that we talked about as being difficult earlier. Animal fat, animal protein, especially what comes out of the udder of a cow. If you're a baby calf, that's a great food. If you're anybody else, stay away. You don't want to fry anything or have foods cooked at a really high temperature because those create advanced glycation end products, which are called AGE, which is so fun because they are aging. We talked earlier about omega-3 fatty acids. You don't want to overdo the omega-6s, and they come mostly from these bottled oils that I'm pretty sure we're not going to be having anyway. Fast food, you know, it's relative. It's never a good idea. But sometimes you're at a small airport and you make the best from what you got, or you're on a long road trip. And so Chipotle got some problems with some of their animal rights. The animal foods that they serve come from factory farms, it seems, even though they claim that they don't. But they also have wonderful access to a fully vegan burrito or a burrito bowl if you don't want to have the wheat. So you do the best you can. And trans fats, thank goodness, have been largely legislated out of the food system. So we don't have to worry too much about those anymore. But I know when I was young and vegan and certainly wasn't going to have butter, we had margarine, we had soft margarine, and we were told that was good. Well, we know now it was really bad. So we do the best we can with what we know, and we try to learn something every day. Refined sugar, not a great idea. Refined flour, not a great idea. These are all going to promote inflammation in the body. Now, inflammation when you skin your knee is great because that's what's going to help it heal. It's this chronic, long-term inflammation that can lead to the 4 top killers: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, many cancers, and Alzheimer's. Another role model, Mimi Kirk, won the PETA's Sexiest Vegan Over 50 contest at 70. She is now 85, and she has a wonderful cookbook called Live Raw and some other books too. So here are some anti-inflammatory foods. And aren't you shocked that I don't have like prime rib and seared salmon? These are anti-inflammatory foods from nature, from the plant kingdom, and they do all these other wonderful things for you too. We've already talked about berries, greens, cabbage family vegetables, celery, beets, walnuts, chia, flax seeds, and I said we'd talk a little bip more about spices. I love this picture. I was at a wonderful retreat at the Ayurveda health retreat in Alachua, Florida, and I took this picture in their kitchen. And I love the idea that the spices are in such big jars. Now, I do apologize that the salt is up front, and I know we're using very little, if any, salt, but I just still love the picture. So turmeric, if you've read Dr. Greger's books, How Not to Die and How Not to Age, you know, turmeric, you want to have a 1/4 teaspoon a day, I believe is what he recommends. I just make sure I have some every day, and I figure out ways. You put it in rice, you put it in stir fries, you just make your food and figure out a way to get it. Ginger is wonderful for digestion. It's anti-inflammatory. It's a very calming kind of food. Cloves are actually the highest anti-inflammatory spice there is. They're obviously, you're not going to have a lot of cloves or powdered cloves, but just a little bit. You get so much bang for your buck. Cinnamon, wonderful. You want to use Ceylon cinnamon or a Sri Lanka cinnamon if you're going to be having it every day for your health. If you're just going to be having for cookies at Christmas time, it doesn't matter. But in the cassia cinnamon, which is the most commonly available, there is a naturally occurring carcinogen, might not be problematic, but with the levels of cinnamon that a lot of us are using, like 1/2 teaspoon and maybe a little more even a day, you want to have the Ceylon cinnamon. And these other spices are amazing as well. More role models, Bob and Fran German. They are YouTube stars in their 80s and very dynamic. And I think you'd really like their YouTube show if you don't watch it already. Now, nutrient needs increase with age. And there is some controversy in our movement about supplements, which ones you need, how many. I don't think anybody argues about vitamin B12. I consider vitamin B12 the little tax I pay for the great privilege of getting to be plant-based. But even if I weren't plant-based, the academies of medicine would be telling me to supplement B12 simply because I'm over 50. So B12 is something we absolutely need, because even though we make it ourselves, it's not really a vitamin. We call it a vitamin, but it's made from bacteria. So you can make some in your mouth, in your gut, but you don't know if you're one of those people who can make enough until you end up with irreversible nerve damage. You don't want to do that. So vitamin B12. D3 used to be we couldn't get that in vegan form. Now we can. That's great. Now, maybe you don't need it. I mean, if you live in the sun and you're out a lot and you're a really good converter of that sunlight on your skin into the hormone of vitamin D. Again, it's called a vitamin. It's a hormone. Maybe you don't need to supplement, but do get your levels tested by your doctor and see what you need. Most doctors these days are recommending about 1,000 international units of vitamin D, because we just live this kind of anti-vitamin D life. We're indoors a lot. If we go outdoors, we're doing the sunblock, which of course I recommended. And, you know, people who are really pale like me use a lot of sunscreen, and people with darker skin have more melanin, so they're not getting the vitamin D action. So we should probably be supplementing that. Some of our doctors recommend supplementing EPA and DHA, which is the fully formed omega-3 fatty acids. Not everybody recommends this. You're going to have to do your own research. A lot of people take fish oil to get this, but the fish got it from algae, and the vegan sources come from algae. And here are some other nutrients that some people like to supplement. Magnesium, it's widely available in the plant kingdom, but sometimes we don't get enough. And it's very good for nerves and mood and migraine headache. A lot of migraine headache clinics actually do magnesium infusions, monthly injection. So zinc, for older people, especially that kind of don't want to eat anymore. You've heard probably your grandparents maybe say, oh, food just doesn't taste good anymore. Well, that can be a lack of zinc, and we can get that supplementally. The most plant-based highest source of zinc is pumpkin seeds, but you have to eat quite a few of them to get the RDA. Iodine, depending on where you live, if you live in a coastal area and get most of your produce locally, then there's probably enough iodine in the soil. But otherwise, for people who are not consuming fish, which I hope none of us are consuming, not only are we exhausting the oceans and just killing these creatures that have every right to live, but there's also so much arsenic, so much mercury, that for whatever some people believe is good about eating fish, we've just outgrown it. We're not in the era when that is the ethical or sensible thing to do. So they do put iodine in the regular salt, which probably most of us are not consuming, but we can consume sea vegetables. My favorite is dulse, but there are all kinds. There's dulse and there's alaria, and if you like seaweed, and if not, you may want to do a little bit of supplementing. Vitamin K2 helps calcium work. It's good for the bones. We always thought that because we get so much vitamin K1 in our leafy greens that we didn't need vitamin K2, but now again, it's an area of controversy. Some studies say different things, but it seems to be that the prevailing sentiment is that we do need to ingest it on purpose. So in terms of the plant world, you can get it in natto, which is a fermented soybean product that is popular in Japan. Definitely an acquired taste and an acquired smell. It's one of those things you either love it or hate it. I'm not crazy about it. So I do supplement zinc. And I love this company, Complement. They're the only company that I've ever been an affiliate for. You know, I went to Catholic school and they raised you to be really, don't be too pushy, don't sell things. But I believe so much in Complement. It's a company that's founded by plant-based people for plant-based people. So Matt Fraser, the no meat athlete, is part of that. Dr. Joel Kahn is part of that. And so if you do want to look at the Complement products, the website is lovecomplement.com, and that's complement with an E. And if you want to get a 10% discount, you can put in my code, which is Main Street, all capital letters, because I'm the Main Street vegan. And there you go on that.